It's no secret at this point that the cast of characters in the Sonic series can be pretty tone deaf at times. While the Mobius equivalent of Metal Gear Rex starts rising out of the ground and begins pummeling a city into Just Cause levels of destruction, you'll still hear the side characters shriek through your radio to proclaim that they ate Kellogg's this morning. Or alternatively, an event or series of actions will happen to a character and they get out of the interaction apparently unscathed. That's not to say all the games in the series have this problem. Titles in both halves of the 2000s certainly appealed more to the narrative and personal aspects of these fictional beings compared to the modern and classic iterations, with mixed results at times. Yet, comparing this expansive list of characters to many others in different series will reveal their primary problem. They ain't deep. Now, when I say deep, I'm not referring to Max Payne levels where the John Wick enthusiast himself spouts one-liners about liquor and politics every waking second of his life with Calibri text floating behind him.
I don't know about this stuff, politics. Everywhere politics.
Instead, Sonic and Co aren't very grounded when it comes to personality and motives, apart from whenever your occasional confectionery item is on the line. Like, for example, it's common knowledge now that Sonic does what he does because, you know, he's a hero archetype that hates corruption, capitalism, NFTs, everything you'd expect, but what more do you actually know? Well, he likes chili dogs. We don't know his innermost fears, we don't know what other hobbies he has, we know him, but we don't know him. Which is kinda ironic in a sense, since we've had years to get to know him at this point, and the closest we got was a spin-off that got canned after only one fucking year. The Boom games were a mess of course, but the personality, especially in the TV show, made this mini-series at the very least memorable. If you take this same blue husk of an icon, mix it in with the writing of Uncharted, you get this as a result. Now we have something more to work with that doesn't reciprocate to every scenario with flat emotion and a quip that was only funny in 1996. Now you're looking at an egomaniac that is obsessed with being the best doing slice-of-life activities. Personality shines through every inch of their character. And then it was followed up by Forces and the fifth seal was opened.
Some of those guys' hearts simply stop.
The series hasn't reached the same point again for whatever reason, which is problematic for longevity, audience interests, and stuff. But depending on the type of player you are, this may not bother you as much. If you don't really care for the story and characters, then you probably stick to the titles that have more of a focus on gameplay rather than narrative. If you want a mix of both, then you most likely enjoy the games that have a fine balance between the two concepts. However, if you want to see these characters in their prime, well, you're shit out of luck, because there are only two games that are any good. The others consist of bland experiences and the other is blacklisted in several provinces for manslaughter. But Paramount have graciously blessed us with a third alternative that has become its own separate universe. For the 14th time in the series now. It's been a while since I've actually properly talked about the Sonic movie, and I get the feeling that it's long overdue at this point after its recent slander for some reason. But after rewatching it for the first time in 2 hours, it's hard to deny that in 1.5 hours I felt more emotionally attached to the movie version of this character compared to the same character in the entirety of a AAA mainline game. Now, am I saying that movie Sonic should take over from the games? No. But what I want to outline is why this film, while not perfect, does a damn good job of making Needlemouse feel like a three-dimensional character, and why the slander I feel is being quite dismissive of the potential that this new film series has. Now, this personality is accomplished through various different ways, most notably that the writing isn't complete and utter dog shit. Like, for example, the film in the opening few minutes immediately establishes all the absolute basics we need to know about Sonic and his personal motives. He's a fast, young, fun-loving, lonely, stalking ball of joy who has been separated from his home planet and longs to make friends in our world. Boom, you're done. You don't need a degree in Dota lore to figure this shit out.
I don't understand it, but I will.
All throughout the movie, the script actually sticks to this foundation. Notice how it doesn't flounder too far from it? But it's not just this character is like this and that's that. No. The plot centralizes around that theme of Sonic wanting a place to be with people to be with. It isn't thrown to the sideline like every other video game film ever created, and we'll touch on that in a bit. I mean, you can literally see this theme at every turn. In the opening, the monologue, the baseball scene, the end of Act 1, the start of Act 2, the bar scene, the motel scene, the highway, Maddie's sister's house, the Transamerica Pyramid. The theme of home is in the final fucking showdown with Robotnik. This movie actually knows how to integrate its theming to feel important, which is definitely expected, as this flick is much more focused, I feel, on character rather than stakes, unlike so many other blockbusters to this degree. Yet, if you compare this directly to a game in the series that has attempted to focus on narrative, let's say everybody's favourite game Forces, notice how the plot suddenly takes a nosedive? In this AAA title that people waited a good long while for, might I add, the story was undoubtedly the worst part of the game, making other elements of this otherwise mediocre game feel that much worse as a result. The number of flaws in the narrative and backwards logic themes that contrive one another, it's astounding. But above all else, the characters lie face down in a ditch when it comes to personality. It's a pretty dead subject at this point since all of the many contrivances have been outlined tenfold, but if anything that just shows you how much disdain people have for the modern storylines, and it's not completely unjustified. I still believe that the plot of Forces was was the main downfall of it because of how it forcibly choked the whole title into submission. So it's actually pleasing for once to see a piece of media that has actually got its themes in line that doesn't get consumed from the inside out like some Phazon virus. Because unlike the game, the movie builds the plot around that specific theme of home, and you get a resulting narrative that is admittedly smaller scale, but gives our titular character an emotional edge and a reason to care about him and his well-being, something direly missing from Forces. But you know, we don't want an emotional Sonic. We don't want to see him be expressive. Nah, he needs to be cocky and act like the dickhead he was in the Archies. That's what makes a good character. I swear, man, the Sonic fanbase gives me a migraine sometimes. Something else I should bring up is the actual character of Sonic himself in the movie. While the game iterations typically depict him as the cool dude with the attitude, in the film that's all toned down a bit to show the new variant of the blue blur, one that is much more in touch with his psychological need of belongingness. Now, this has recently sparked sharp debates in different slices of the fandom, with a fairly 50-50 majority proclaiming that this is either a good addition or that it's deviating too much from the source material. So, as a counter proposal, I say we take a step back and look at Sonic's personality from a strictly film critic perspective to look at this caricature for what he truly is. Jesus, this is sounding like an episode of Black Mirror. So like mentioned earlier, Sonic is a lonely, young hedgehog who is insecure about living alone forever. This is also shown to be his biggest fear, displaying clear signs of this in various points throughout the movie where he gets more emotionally unstable when he is confronted by it. So already, we see him at his worst point. Good. Extra tidbits of his hobbies and interests are also subtly sprinkled in, further conveying and building this character up to feel as if he actually exists in this world. It's also worth mentioning that this is done to resonate with its younger target audience and let him connect to this ideological demographic, which is why you see Sonic doing the Quicksilver and the Fortnite. Good. I think it might not be, in all honesty.
Our journey to victory has begun! Death to the FBI!
Through interactions with other members of the cast, we see the way that Sonic connects with people, showing his childish traits and somewhat cocky behaviour for the audience to see. Triple good. Regardless of your feelings towards this iteration as a fan of the series, from a technical and movie standpoint, Sonic has a good foundation for a protagonist. He's no Ethan Mars, but it still works and was effective. And I mean, hell, even as a fan of the series, this iteration has a lot of potential. I personally see this film as being a sort of origin story for Sonic, one that's set in our world with some comically exaggerated elements, of course. And since this is an origin, it makes sense that this first movie would focus on the soul of the characters. Sonic is cocky, but less so, as he's still got more emotional elements that are looked at in more depth throughout the runtime. With the upcoming second movie, and potentially third if the stars align, Sonic has the potential to grow into the version we know him to be from the games, coming full circle in a humongously satisfying character arc. This first film alone is open for so much interpolation, and it's seemingly endless. Oh wait, what's that? Not cocky enough? Oh, very well then. Whole film's bad because he's not cocky enough. Sonic Twitter's mind clearly has its own gravitational pull. See, this is what I don't really get about people that say the film's bad just because Sonic's not cocky enough, because it's just being so dismissive of the underlying potential. You know, it's a funny juxtaposition. We said we wanted Sonic to show more emotion, so we see his interests, hobbies, and him confronting his fears. We said we wanted to see him at his worst, so he gets knocked down both mentally and physically. We said we wanted character above all else, and now that we got character, people are saying it's too soppy and heartfelt. I don't get it. What's that? Sonic is lonely and showing it? It's the end of the fucking world! And this obviously goes without saying that this is all pretty subjective. Some people may just simply not be a fan of this more child-orientated approach, similar to how people dislike Colors and Lost World for the same reason. And that's fine. If you prefer another iteration of a character, then that is a-okay and you are privy to your own subjective opinions. But you see, the problem is that people are saying that the whole movie is bad purely down to this different characterization of Sonic. I'm not going to sit here and say that the film is perfect because fuck no, it's definitely not perfect. The story has flaws, the concept can feel too slow at times, it maybe panders a bit too hard to the younger audience members, and some of the music and side characters could have certainly had an upgrade in quality, but saying that Sonic is completely wrong as a character is in itself being very dismissive of this emotionally grounded being and what I believe will be a great series of films. I could very well be wrong, it could go belly up, but I can dream. Alright, so to round this all up, why don't we discuss additional reasons why this movie's character worked while others in the same genre failed so very miserably. As a video game film, expectations are typically very low, mainly because pretty much every other attempt at transferring a game to movie form almost always ends up being a messy disaster. One of the few other video game films I've had the misfortune of seeing was Assassin's Creed, which was one of the worst experiences of my entire life for a multitude of reasons that would require an animus just to get through them all. And since the bar was already set so goddamn low, the Sonic movie soared high above typical expectations, so let's just see how it fared against others in the genre, how it succeeded at keeping character, and why that is. if you couldn't tell already, I really don't know where to take this. Assassin's Creed, it was an ass film fueled by greed, and above all else, you didn't get a feel for anything. The characters, the stakes, the protagonist, villains, settings, even the bloody actors questioned what was going on for a majority of this miserable runtime.
What is this? What does that mean?
Even if you've played any of the games, the film is still an utter shit show that makes no logical sense in any department. We got the protagonist, Cal, in the exact same scenario as Desmond in the games. He gets caught by the Templars, forced into the Animus to relive ancestors' memories, to find an Apple of Eden, yada yada yada. Only problem is, it feels entirely devoid of emotion and is as flatly delivered as Assassin's Creed 1 dialogue. We don't know anything about Cal other than the fact that he couldn't give less of a shit about living in this black void that is the fucking Assassin's Creed universe. And also the rules of how everything works are unclear too, with the Animus machine, the singular thing that the whole film relies on to work, never getting explained to the audience. Is Cal controlling Aguilar the Spanish assassin? Is he merely mimicking the moves? Who knows? Who even cares? It's because of this overarching knowledge of nothing and the characters being as in-depth as thwomps that nullifies everything to just pure trash. Now in comparison, the Hedgehog does things a lot differently, instead taking elements from the games and instead molding them into something that works in movie form while not alienating the general audience. All the references and items taken from the game serve a purpose and are fairly straightforward to understand, which in turn helps us to do what the directors intended, connect with the characters, instead of leaving us scratching our noggins just to work out who the Templars even were. Also, this movie in comparison to so many others like Tomb Raider, Doom and Mortal Kombat 2021, it doesn't have an over-reliance on keeping too heavily to whatever source material there is to the point where it's unbearable. For instance, one of the newer Tomb Raider movies, the one with Alicia Vikander, not Angelina Jolie, is pretty much identical to the already incredibly cinematic 2013 game. Same goes for Mortal Kombat, throwing too much game lore at the wall hoping for at least some of it to eventually stick, with not much success. These films are either too identical or try way too much to be identical to the point where there's no point in actually watching, since you know, you can actually play it yourself, you can go at your own pace and explore the world more than just watching on a silver screen. And then Doom was, well, it was doomed, and still it tried too hard. Cutting back to Sonic again, we got a new fleshed out concept, it's got a unique plot that doesn't try to copy another product directly, new appearance, new lore, in short, an actual new unique experience and not a pandering mess of references. Do you see the point I'm trying to make here? What I'm aiming at is the point that just because something is different to what we regularly expect does not make it inherently bad. Whether that be the character or the theming, you should not be as dismissive. Could the concept have been more ambitious? Sure, but at least it stands out for multiple reasons and it doesn't just blend in with everything else that the series has to offer. And I feel that so long as this type of mindset to be different stays with the filming process, then we can only expect good things. Hopefully. I can't guarantee anything. But nevertheless, disregarding this version of the character for being too soppy or heartfelt and calling it the worst iteration conceived, I feel is just being a bit hypocritical, considering we've been asking for a more personal look into who this character can be for years. Maybe it's just not your cup of tea, fair enough, but this version of Sonic, in my opinion, is not nearly as bad as people make him out to be, from personality to potential if you give him a try. But we maybe could have just a bit more action scenes in the sequel. Please. That's my take. Subscribe to me, please. Give me your money and just don't be stupid. Fuck off.